TV, and Tag Radio. Technology now has a voice of innovation and information. Get it on www.tagtvonline.com. It was the biggest lineup of nationally recognized featured speakers and the largest attended event in the 10-year history of the Technology Association of Georgia. The Showcase Exhibition Center was packed with both the top 40 most innovative companies across Georgia and top tech vendors from nearly every sector imaginable, as each exhibit had a line of interesting spectators and a buzz of new business that seemed to fill the air. The 2009 Georgia Technology Summit, the energy of innovation, truly demonstrated its theme in a spirit that encapsulated an entire floor of the Cobb Galleria Center. Well over 1,200 VIPs, the best of the technology industry across our state and beyond, gathered together to celebrate past, present, and future success. Greetings, everyone. It's the week after what experts and media pundits alike are calling one of the most exciting and successful technology events in our state ever. It's Tuesday, March 10, 2009, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. No one could have anticipated the huge turnout nor the positive energy of innovation that gave birth to hope and positive energy to an economy challenged by recent financial crises. Listen to a unique perspective as Tino speaks with one of the event's featured speakers, GE President of its Energy Services $10 billion operation, Dan Heintzelman. The interview, both a harbinger of the grand event to come and of a future of innovation in a spectrum of technology sectors. Tino Tech Talks with GE Energy Services President Dan Heintzelman only hours before the GTS launched live to a standing room only audience last Tuesday.
Dan, thank you for joining me on Tech Talk.
Thanks, Tino, for having me today.
Well, we've just pushed through the big summit with 1,200 people in attendance, and appreciate you closing it up for us. And wanted to reiterate some of the things you talked about, and maybe you can add a little more color for our listening audience. Let's start off with just the general question of energy today. What's the biggest challenge we're facing as a nation?
Well, I think there's really a few things that we look at from our business point of view around the big topic of energy, and I think probably the one that everyone recognizes as so important is the impact on the environment and climate change issues that are driven largely by the system that produces the energy here in our country. About 40% of all the CO2 emissions in our country are coming from power generation, and so this represents a giant challenge for us, as we work to improve that scenario over the long run through new technology. A couple of other areas. One is just the reliability of that supply over time as we work to meet this growing demand. Certainly we expect that not only demand is going to grow in this country, but around the world, we're expecting energy consumption to almost triple by 2050, and the reliability that's going to put demands for in the system are going to be a tremendous challenge. Price of fuel, affordability of fuel, availability of fuel, including all the topics around energy security. These are the things that we hear from our customers and the things that are driving our business today when we look at technology investments and some of the big challenges that we think need to be solved.
Well, do you think because you talked about the 40%, the 40 percentage points there, do you think the energy mix, if you could had your crystal ball on 10 years out, I know you guys spend a lot of time on this, will be a very different usage mix than it is today?
Yeah, I think it'll be different than today, although I do think there'll be a portfolio for sure in the future. We think that there is a definite need for the full spectrum of energy generating technologies. I think the thing it's safe to say is that there will be a larger percentage in the future of our generating technologies coming from the renewable space, whether it's wind or solar or some of the emerging technologies there. But I do believe that there will be a strong place in the portfolio for coal-fired technologies, nuclear, gas, many of the things that we have the system built around today.
Well, I'm certainly not an expert, but being around the technology field all day and watching some of these new companies emerging, ethanol seems to be dropping down a little bit, particularly corn. And is that actually the case, or?
Well, I think that it's changes over time. Whether it's down today or up tomorrow, I think is to be determined. And what we look at is our ability as a company to develop technologies that will keep us as a viable supplier of those critical capabilities, regardless of which fuel source is more expensive or less expensive at any given point in time. As I said, we think that there will be a portfolio of different generating technologies in place, and we're working on many of them, if not most of them, recognizing that the ebbs and flows of supply will change over time, and we need to be ready for playing in all of them.
Well, I imagine the new technologies and innovations are going to be a significant element of this. So can you point out some new technologies that we can expect to see soon?
Sure. I'd say that the gasification technologies, I think the clean coal, as it's described, or the ability to take coal and turn it into gas and burn it and potentially capture and the carbon. These are technologies that are in the demonstration phase or have been in place in some settings already. So scaling them, trying to develop them so that they're economically more viable. These are things that we see in the near future. Of course, renewables. Renewables in many different forms. Wind is gaining tremendous scale now in the country here as well as around the world. That technology continues to mature, become more reliable, and more effective and efficient as the years go by. Solar, not quite there yet. Solar economically is still not quite a economically viable technology, although it's improving pretty rapidly. And we do believe that some of the technologies that are now in the demonstration phase will have a chance to be more viable in the future. I think another area that we're very excited about is in the area of efficiency, productivity, safety, sustainability, all the things that really are focused on the existing infrastructure that's in place today around the country. We're going to be adding a lot of new capacity or new technologies into the mix. However, there's a tremendous installed base of capabilities that's been built up through the years here, and there are many technologies applied to that installed base that can, in fact, make it more effective, more efficient, more cleaner, and in fact more flexible, so that we can get more out of that which already exists. And these technologies tend to be more targeted at specific types of power plants, and this is really an area where we have a lot of innovation that's been coming into play, either through our company or working with some of our suppliers to solve problems today that didn't really exist a few years ago.
Well, earlier you mentioned reliability, and a term that's relatively new to me and probably new to some of our listeners will be smart grid, and I know it's a hot topic right now. So maybe you can talk a minute about what smart grid is, and then how you're looking to involve GE in this process. By the way, TAG, for our TAG listeners out here, is looking to start a smart grid society. We're working with some of the folks over at GE to help us launch our 23rd society.
Well, that's great news, and look forward to meeting many of our members and listeners as we kind of build this concept out. The smart grid, we're very excited about this here in GE, and I think probably the biggest challenge is trying to come to grips with what is the smart grid. And from our point of view, it's a term that's being used to describe hundreds, if not really thousands, of innovative improvements that are going to be applied to our power supply and delivery system. We think it's going to involve concepts that will allow utilities to better manage their load demand. It's going to enable us to bring higher penetrations or percentages of the renewables into the mix. It's going to improve transmission system, substation performance, the reliability of the aging equipment throughout that system. And it should ultimately allow us to have better response to any outages that occur or breakdowns, which are becoming increasingly more present in this aging infrastructure we have throughout the country. I think one of the big things that's going to come from this is ultimately, though, an opportunity for consumers, whether they be industrial or residential consumers, to have a greater control over how they consume and ultimately how they pay for the energy that they use. So demand control is a big deal here. When we look at this thing, I think the one of the products that we have we've been in this product for years and years, and we're introducing some really neat new technology now, is just in the area of metering and generation of the technologies, the communications technologies that we have today are going to allow meters to become smarter. And that will just unleash a whole new possible area where technology can be applied inside the home or with the utility around, gaining insight exactly as to how the energy is being used, and it can have a real impact on making it not only more reliable but more efficient and potentially even cheaper for consumers.
Well, I'm reading Friedman's book, Hot, Flat, and Crowded, and of course he was a speaker at last week's event, and he talks about appliances in the home, and this is what you're referring to, and the meter being smarter and the appliance being smarter. So I guess your refrigerator is going to turn on and off based on need and peak demand. And how far away are we from that? Is this something that we're talking about a year from now, 5 years from now?
Well, I think that these technologies around the appliances in the home and controlling them in a different way, or allowing consumers to be more in control of how they use electricity. This is not something that's too far away. Clearly, the demand for the way that this will come into place is going to have something to do with economics. And I find it a little bit challenging to think that every appliance in the country is going to be changed out and upgraded anytime soon. But I do believe that over time, the software applications and the technology inside the home are going to become more and more empowering to the consumers. Clearly, the technology does exist today. It's a matter of economics and getting it into place faster. And I think this is one area where the stimulus package that is on the table now here in this country can help. There are certainly, we believe, some elements of the stimulus package that are going to enable a faster implementation of some of these possibilities. And this is all something that's playing out in front of us. It's certainly not been determined exactly how this is going to be distributed or how it's going to work yet, but certainly something that we're very interested in, and I do believe it will have an impact on how fast this all will happen.
Dan, you've been in this field for quite a while, and I'm in some of the things I'm reading the interest in changing technology faster in the energy area is somewhat. Well, I ask you the question, is it somewhat dependent on the price of gas? It seems like when the price of gas is higher, there would be, more propensity towards making changes. The price of gas now is $1.80 or something like that, and maybe do people take their foot off the pedal a little bit, so to speak?
Well, I think there's no question there's a big economic connection here. When fuel's expensive, then the investments that can be made to, help be more efficient, those investments are more attractive. When fuel's cheaper, they become less attractive. And this is really, I think, an area where the government and policy can help. For sure, there's more interest at the national level now to have an energy policy and to stimulate some of the changes that we know are necessary in the country over the long term that may not, in fact, be as economically viable in the short term. I think our experience here in our energy services business is that the technologies that can incrementally improve the system are constantly coming forward, and we've had a tremendous business performance here introducing those technologies to through our customers, which says that is economically viable or there are good paybacks. And the question is, how fast do we want to go, and what are some of the stimulus that the government can help the system with so that it happens on a more widespread basis.
Well, Dan, we're almost out of time, but the last question I'd like to ask you is about Georgia entrepreneurs and innovators. We have certainly a state that has plenty of both, and what can they take from how GE approaches life? What can they learn from GE?
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is say that we have tremendous interaction with a number of innovators and entrepreneurs from across Georgia today. They're contributing to many of the technologies and the improvements that are finding their way into the energy system in our country. And I believe that as the opportunities change in the future, either through government intervention or incentives, or just through the demands that are coming from our customers, we're going to continue to be very dependent on those innovators and on the various entrepreneurs to help move technologies forward. We don't necessarily try to do everything ourselves. We do have over 2,500 engineers working within a 3-hour drive here of the Atlanta area, and we develop some technology. We are also integrators or system integrators where we can bring together solutions that involve more than that which we work on our own. And we just look at that tremendous group of people out there that have great ideas, and we want them to continue to talk to us, and we believe that we'll find new ways to bring value to our customers and to the consumers and to the system as a whole here in the U.S.
Well, I know that our entrepreneurs, innovators listening to this conversation will appreciate hearing that, and I'm glad to see that there's so much going on today. So, Dan, thank you very much for joining me on Tech Talk. I look forward, and TAG looks forward to working with GE moving forward.
Well, thank you for having me today. I really enjoyed this, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again in the future.
Thank you.
All right, goodbye.